Another day, another fat load of awesome Modern Horizons spoilers. Let us dive in! Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. How did you like that I said let's dive in and then I played the intro and here I am saying this? Where are the spoilers? All right, let's dive in. Just re-loop it back to the beginning. We'll just keep putting you in the same cycle over and over. Just kidding. Calm down, relax. All right, first card we're going to talk about is Crypt Rats. 1 black, 2 colorless for a 1/1 rat. I like it's funny that the creature type says rat and it kind of makes you go, wait, well it says rats up at the top and there's a bunch of rats. It's like creatures shouldn't it be rats? But that's one of the tiny little idiosyncrasies of Magic the Gathering. Now, Crypt Rats is an old school card from like back in Vision days. What does it do? Well, you pay X mana, it deals X damage to each creature and each player, spend only black mana on X. Shoo, you little wormtails, go away. My corpses aren't your dinner. And that is Ghoul Caller Gisa. That's, you know what, that's some fun little flavor to it. That's a fun little bit of flavor text to tie into name. They're Crypt Rats. I assume that the artwork is supposed to be showing them kind of piled on top of a coffin. At first when I looked at it, I'm like, why are these rats on a crate if they're in a crypt? But look at them. They've got to be just ridden with pestilence and disease. And that actually ties into their ability. Their ability is like a gigantic pestilence style ability. And it becomes even more fun if you can stop these guys from taking damage. If you can prevent damage to them, then they can keep going off over and over. This isn't uncommon in Modern Horizons. Did I say Modern Masters at the beginning of the video? Oh well, you guys know. I can't remember now if I said Modern Horizons or Modern Masters. If I did, it'll be edited. So either way, this comment won't make any sense. Okay, so in terms of Modern, this card's not terrible. I have no idea if it'll find a home in Modern, but at least it doesn't feel like some of the weak garbage that we have been seeing from this set. Let us move on to the next card. Dregscape Sliver. Slivers are back. So what do we have here? 1 black, 1 colorless for a 2/2 sliver. Each sliver creature card in your graveyard has Unearth. And if you don't know what Unearth is, it's return the creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile it at the beginning of the next end step, or if it would leave the battlefield. And you can only unearth at sorcery speed, so you can't just be like, surprise blockers, or anything like that. You don't get to pull that off. This is an ability that originally showed up in the Alara block. It's specifically tuned to the plane of Grixis, where it's all about undeath. So the whole Unearth concept is a pretty funky one. This honestly feels kind of gross for Slivers. I mean, what you want to do is you want to be taking out the Slivers that have troubling abilities for you. Like when you're playing against a Sliver deck, you want to get rid of certain Slivers because the abilities all start piling up and things get crazy. It's also interesting to note that they have returned to the original look of Slivers. Instead of having them have a more humanoid form like they tried for a brief period in the core set, they have dispensed with the humanoid form and gone back to what is, for me, the traditional way that a Sliver looks, with its kind of like almost snakey-ish body with like a little claw coming out like this, baga, baga, right? So that's how they're supposed to look in my books. Now, what's interesting to note is when they changed the Slivers to look humanoid, they also made it so Slivers would only affect your side of the table. It used to be that Sliver cards affected all Slivers in play, but it looks like going forwards they've adapted it into just your Slivers, which feels better in all honesty. It's like, if I control my Slivers, why are they helping my opponent's Slivers? So that is an excellent choice. I mean, Dregscape Sliver, it's got that kind of black, ominous feel to it. It does look like it's busting up out of the earth. So this one, to me, overall, seems very well wrapped together. Then we've got Etchings of the Chosen. First time I read this card, I just said, wow. 1 black, 1 white, 1 colorless. When Etchings of the Chosen enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. Sacrifice a creature of the chosen type. Target creature you control gains indestructible till end of turn. And black, and also black-white combos are where you will see abilities like this, where you can sacrifice creatures to make other creatures indestructible. This one, as I've said in previous videos, this one honestly does feel like a reuse, not a reusing, but a repurposing of old Magic artwork that they created for something else. Because this Etchings of the Chosen, what's even happening in this artwork, in all honesty? You just see like random different creatures, and one is all lit up like a laboratory experiment almost. Like the card itself is powerful, but there's a real confusion in terms of how the card's mechanics tie to the art. And the more we go through this, as I've said before, the more I feel like Modern Horizons has a lot of repurposed artwork that was created for other things, got thrown into the file and not used, and now they're finding homes for it. So, the card is cool, but the flavor of the artwork throws me right off. Moving on, we've got Force of Despair. 2 black and a colorless. It's an instant. This is black's play it on your opponent turn spell. And this is the one that says, if it's not your turn, you can exile a black card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Destroy all creatures that entered the battlefield this turn. So apparently this is going to be a pretty strong answer for decks like Affinity, where it's just going to shut them down. The artwork is really, really evocative. Good Lord. You can see what looks like a shining example of valor. You've got like a knight leaping forward with his armor on, and then you can see it's like his body is being pulled back and he's turning into like a specter of death there. And you can see his arms wasting away. You can see all the blood kind of flicking away until at the very end, all you have left is the skeletal arm. That is pretty intense artwork. Seb McKinnon has a real flair for Magic artwork. He is genuinely talented, and I'm glad to have him making Magic artwork. This card definitely feels strong enough for Modern. This doesn't feel like a card that is just some random jank they're shoving on us, so that's nice. This one I'm happy to see. The artwork is mesmerizing. Honestly, I keep staring at it. It's like, what? Every time you look at it, you see more details. I like the way that he has the sword up at front like he's ready for battle, and by the end of it, doesn't even have the strength to hold the sword anymore. The sword's falling away, and the sword is in shadows as well. That's pretty cool. Next up, we've got a nice card. Giver of Runes. Now, that may sound familiar to you based on names of other cards, like, oh, I don't know, Mother of Runes? Because that's what Giver of Runes is. Giver of Runes is a New Age Mother of Runes. 1 white for a 1/2, so it's got a little more toughness than a Mother of Runes, but it is also more limited. This is a core cleric. Another target creature you control gains protection from colorless or from the color of your choice until end of turn. She provides marks of protection to those she chooses as family. This is another one that feels like repurposed artwork. This looks to me like this was meant to originally show up somewhere else, probably when the Eldrazi were running wild and devastating everything. The artwork with the devastation behind her, and she's holding some kind of magic in her hand. Now, the magic is fairly nebulous, so it gives them a lot of leeway to make different cards with it. Overall, this feels fine to me. Even though this is repurposed artwork, I feel like it genuinely fits onto this card. And I mean, I guess I can't say for sure that it's repurposed artwork, but the fact that it's a core and the landscape around it definitely gives that feeling to me. But I give it a pass because, in all honesty, it's pretty solid. I mean, being able to give another target creature you control protection from colorless or the color of your choice until end of turn is nice. It's a nice nod to the core as well, dealing with the Eldrazi. You can actually give protection from Eldrazi with her ability. Now, she can't protect herself, so there is that. Overall, I give this card a thumbs up. I think it's a really solid card, definitely powerful enough to make its way into Modern. This is a good execution. The artwork is great. I love the contrast between the barren lands and the roiling stormy sky behind her as she just kind of contemplatively stares at this magic, basically, I suppose, deciding to save who she can in this forsaken world. Next up, we've got Goblin Engineer. This is another nod to another card. So, 1 red, 1 colorless for a 1/2. When Goblin Engineer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. When you read that ability first, you'll be like, why would I want to do that? Well, that's where the second ability comes in. 1 red and tap, sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is, in a way, a weaker version of Goblin Tinkerer, or Goblin Tinkerer. Either way, it's a weaker version of him, but it does come with the fact that it lets you search up an artifact to put into your graveyard. So there is that. It definitely, wait, is it Goblin Tinkerer? Or is it Goblin? No, it's Goblin Welder, not Goblin Tinkerer. Goblin Tinkerer destroys artifacts. Goblin Welder is the one that shows the, I wrecked your robot guy, boss, but I made you an ashtray. That's kind of fun. So this is a nod, sorry, to Goblin Welder, all right? It does have the casting cost of a Goblin Tinker. But either way, this is a weaker version of Goblin Welder, but with the side provision that it will let you get something and put it in your graveyard, so you'll have it ready to go right away where you can do a trade, which could actually lead to easier combos. So in some situations, Goblin Engineer could actually be considered more powerful than the Welder because it sets itself up for success. Overall, this feels like a card that could enter into like actual modern decks. It does feel strong enough to me. The artwork just shows a Goblin kind of hunched down with the wrench, kind of messing around. He's down in some kind of tunnel or something. I don't know. I'm not sure. This is another one that feels like it's repurposed, but I could be wrong about that. Moving on. Good Fortune Unicorn. 1 green, 1 white, 1 colors for a 2/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Catching even a glimpse of one is the start of 8 years of good luck. Well, the counter sticks around. Isn't it good luck for the rest of your life? 8's such a weird arbitrary number. Is that supposed to be like, isn't it 7 years bad luck for smashing a mirror? 8 years good luck for seeing a unicorn? Is that what they're going for? So you have this unicorn set in this kind of, the forest that he's in doesn't look really healthy. It's got like kind of a green muted tone to it. This unicorn doesn't seem too lucky in all honesty. It's kind of whatever artwork. You just look and go, yeah, okay, it's a unicorn. I don't have that much to say about it. Overall, I mean, it beefs every other creature that comes into play. So it seems decent. It seems decent. It doesn't seem like a weak piece of garbage, but it's also not a blow off the barn door kind of power level. Next up, we got Lava Belly Sliver. 1 red, 1 white, 1 colorless for a 2/2. Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker, and you gain 1 life. Warm enough to incubate eggs or incinerate those who would eat them. All right, fair enough. I mean, the flavor text, it's all right. I think it's weird that they call it Lava Belly Sliver when the flames are shown at its tail and coming off the little like tendrils on its head. I do genuinely feel like they just took Sliver artwork that they had sitting around and go, you know what, we're putting Slivers in the set. A lot of the stuff in Modern Horizons feels like they already had the artwork for it and they're just working with what they have. But overall, in terms of Slivers, this one's not too shabby. When it comes into the battlefield, it's going to do damage to a target of your choice, not creatures obviously, but I like the fact that you can either hit a player or a planeswalker with it. So you can put out Slivers and take out your opponent's planeswalkers without actually having to attack, which is not too shabby. I've noticed in recent times they're making more cards that say hit a player or a planeswalker. Then we've got Lightning Skelemental. Why is my nose so itchy? Oh God, I need to get an official nose itcher. All right, 2 red and a black for a 6/1 trample with haste. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Lightning Skelemental. Let's get the obvious out of the way. This is a modified Ball Lightning. All they did was change 1 of the red mana to a black mana. It's still the 6/1 trample haste that goes away at the end of the turn. But on top of it, when it hits a player, that player discards 2 cards. And that's a big difference. That makes this thing a lot more powerful in my eyes than Ball Lightning because it can hit your opponent's hand. The artwork is pretty intense, honestly. You've got this big kind of crazy electric head on top of like a skeleton body that's running along. It looks like a scarecrow. It feels to me like Scarecrow. It doesn't feel like a 6/1 creature when you look at the artwork. This again, there are a lot of cards that really do feel to me like they just pulled it from the old art files. And this is another one where, all credit to them, they did make a very interesting card to go with it that was a nod to Ball Lightning. So overall, I like Lightning Skelemental, even if I feel like the artwork is a bit wonky and doesn't feel like a 6/1 creature that can't be stopped, like that's just going to trample over everything. It doesn't give me that feel from the artwork. Next up, we've got a fairly boring reprint in all honesty, Man of War. 1 blue, 2 colors for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, return target creature to its owner's hand. Beauty to the eye does not always translate to the touch. Nemaya, Ephemera Philosopher. So this is just a reprint from all the way back in the days of Mirage. This is from the Mirage block, I think specifically Visions. It's a serviceable card. It is what it is. It's nothing super exciting. It just feels like filler for the set to me. Then we've got Planed Bound Accomplice. Now this is a really interesting card. 1 red, 2 colors for a 1/3 human wizard. You may put a pay 1 red. You may put a Planeswalker card from your hand onto the battlefield, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Flavor text says, told ya I had friends. And in the background of the artwork, in the forefront, you have who is the plane-bound accomplice, not apprentice, accomplice. And they've clearly summoned up a Planeswalker in the background. Now, who is that Planeswalker? I actually did a stream yesterday where I talked about, are we getting a new Treefolk Planeswalker? I want to know who this character is. Is this a dryad where is this a dryad melded with their life tree? Is that what's going on? Is it a dryad melded with a Treefolk? You can actually see in the arms of this creature that there's lava flowing through this thing, or at least fire and embers pouring and coruscating through the arms of this beast. So it feels to me like it's going to be like a red-green Treefolk Planeswalker, and that is super exciting to me. The power level of this card seems very decent, and there's certain cards that scream, pair me up, Papa, put me in, take me off the bench and put me in. Sundial of the Infinite is definitely one of them, because you can pay 1 mana and end your turn. Basically, what's going to happen is at the beginning of your next end step, a trigger is going to go on the stack that says sacrifice the Planeswalker. In response to that trigger, you activate the Sundial of the Infinite, you get to keep the Planeswalker in play. So this is going to be a way to cheat out some Planeswalkers. Next up, we've got Prismatic Vista. This is a variation on a fetch land. This one only gets basic lands. So pay 1 life, sacrifice Prismatic Vista, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. There is beauty in the uncertainty of potential. Hey, you know what? I like that flavor text. Now, some of you may be thinking, wait, isn't this like Untamed Wild Terramorphic Expanse? Well, the big difference is that the land comes into play untapped. So people will use this over those. People are willing to pay life for speed. This is speedier. Honestly, this card is probably going to end up in a lot of decks. And it helps you move around things like Blood Moon a little more in Modern as well. So to me, Prismatic Vista is going to be a big deal, I'm guessing. This feels like a card that's going to get a lot of play and be something. So be aware of that. And the artwork is interesting too. You've definitely got that weird feel of just different terrain, although it doesn't feel like all 5 terrains. This feels like it was probably meant to be, again, the artwork was meant to be used for something else. After that, we've got Ranger, Captain of Eos, and this is fun. This is a step up from Ranger of Eos. The Ranger of Eos that let you search for creature cards from your deck. Well, the Ranger Captain of Eos lets you search for a creature from your deck instead of 2. When he comes into the battlefield, you can search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 or less, reveal it and put it into your hand. And his other ability is sacrifice him. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. So this can be used in a couple of different ways. You can use it to shut off your opponent's ability to do a big storm combo turn. You can also use it to make sure that your opponent can't do any kind of board wipe effects by sacrificing it during their upkeep when they can only cast instant speed stuff. So by the time their main phase rolls around, they have no ability to do a board wipe. So 3 mana for a 3/3 that fetches you another card and can be used to hose down your opponent. It seems like it's got a nice level of power. I like the bird that's sitting on his shoulder because that represents the one mana cost or less creature that you could be searching up. Clearly, this guy is from the world of Alara, specifically Bant. You can see the sigils that are awarded to heroes hanging off of him and his lion. Looking pretty regal, honestly. This is a pretty impressive looking card. I like it. I like it. This one feels like it has enough power for Modern. Moving on to Scour All Possibilities. 1 blue, 1 colorless, scry 2, then draw a card. And it's got flashback for 5 mana. Searching the future for answers often leads to further questions. Well, that makes sense, especially if you're getting cryptic responses from the future. I love this artwork. It is a mage staring into a reflecting pool, seeing himself again over and over. It's like that mirror effect, if you've ever had that, where you've had a mirror in front of you and behind you, and it essentially creates infinite views. Well, this is being done through use of a scrying pool, and I really, really enjoy it. I like the fact that it's reversed each time, so you've got the crescent effect going back and forth, and kind of framing each smaller iteration. I really like the way this artwork works. Next up, we got Scrapyard Recombiner. 3 colorless gets you a modular 2 artifact creature, and modular means that it enters the battlefield with 2+1, well, the number, so in this case, it's 2+1/+1 counters. And when the creature goes to the graveyard, you can put its +1/+1 counters on another artifact creature. So that's pretty cool. And it's got tap, sacrifice an artifact, search your library for a construct card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. I like this. I like the idea behind this, where basically he takes the scrap of robots and combines them to make a new robot. That's neat. I like it. Overall, this is okay. I don't know if this is good enough for Modern, truthfully. I don't know. I mean, seems like maybe it could fit into Infinity, but not Infinity, I should say Affinity, but it also might be too slow and wonky for that. And this might just be some rando build around it kind of goofiness. After that, we've got one of the lands we didn't get to see yesterday because the full artwork wasn't available for it, and that is Silent Clearing, which to me looks like Cranberry Bog. This looks like a cranberry bog. Tap it to pay 1 life out of black or a white, 1 mana, and tap it, sacrifice it to draw a card. The expedition's end began the marsh's story. So I guess this art is supposed to represent that this is just a completely like blood-soaked land, and you can actually see a spear with like the remnants of a tattered pennant blowing in the wind, while a shrouded moon kind of highlights it. That's a lot of blood. I don't know what's supposed to make this land white in any regard. It's very clear what makes it black. And look at the lotus-like trees. Honestly, was this originally supposed to be a land that you sacrificed creatures to and it would produce mana of different colors? It kind of gives me that feel. It feels like this was maybe meant to be a different land, because they almost look like lotus trees in the background. Pretty interesting. I like it. I like it. All right, and for anybody who didn't see my previous video where I talked about it, I expect these lands to be a big deal in Modern. Then we've got a returning friend, Happy Little Spore Frog. 1 green mana gets you a cute little Spore Frog, 1/1, sacrifice Spore Frog, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. A progenitor of tadpoles and allergies in equal measure. That's kind of fun. Obviously, it's not the allergies that are causing the combat damage not to be done. It's the fact that he just fills the air with so many spores you can't see what's going on. But that's fun. He's got cute little art. What's up, buddy? Please don't sacrifice me. Shut up. We'll squeeze all the spores out of you, son. Next up, we got another Sliver, Tempered Sliver. 1 green, 2 colors for a 2/2. Sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. The question isn't whether Slivers will adapt to a world's perils, but whether the world's perils will adapt to Slivers. It's true. Slivers are a massively invasive species that just end up dominating whatever environment they grow into. So, I mean, this one looks like it fits to a degree. Like, it's kind of confusing because the Sliver looks plated, and then you've got lava pouring out of a tree, and you have a Sliver like, oh, I guess the idea is supposed to be that it's literally tempering its blade the same way you would temper a sword blade with heat. So that's cool. I like that, actually. This is nice looking artwork, in all honesty. This Sliver looks right. It looks insectile, it looks dangerous, it looks alien, and it's adapting to the features of the world that it's in. That's cool. I enjoy this artwork. All right. Now, is it good enough for Modern? I mean, who cares about the Slivers? People are going to be happy with them anyways. Then we've got the first Sliver. Speaking of Slivers, people are going to be happy with. 1 of every color gets you a 7/7. So this, in the tradition of things like Sliver Queen and Sliver Overlord, we have your big fat daddy Sliver, where for 5 mana you get a 7/7 with some kind of beefcake ability. So the first Sliver has Cascade. So Cascade, here's how it works. When you cast a spell, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less than the cascaded spell. So in this case, it would be less than 5. You may cast it without paying its mana cost, and then you put the exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. And all of your Sliver spells while this guy gets Cascade. And that feels pretty crazy, because you can just cascade down the chain from bigger Sliver into all these different Slivers. Like, just casting the first Sliver could end up netting you multiple Slivers, depending. Well, that's not really true, because when you cast it, it's on the stack. So the other ones coming out won't get the benefit of that. You have to cast the Sliver spells to get Cascade. So never mind, I'm wrong on that. The first casting of the first Sliver isn't going to cause a chain, but then if you cast another beefy Sliver, like a Sliver Queen or a Sliver Overlord, then that could chain into some more Sliver goodness. That's pretty cool. Next up, You've got Waterlogged Grove. Oh, wait a minute, actually. Never mind. Am I wrong here? When you cast this spell, then Sliver spells you cast would have Cascade. So yeah, it doesn't work because he's on the stack. Once he comes into play, further Slivers. I just had to make sure. I want to make sure I'm accurate here. Waterlogged Grove is the next one, and this is the 5th and final of the modern enemy-colored lands Horizon land cycle. So this one gives you the green or the blue. Pay 1 mana to sacrifice it. Surprise, surprise. The trees pulled water from deep underground, filling the forest for miles. Now this artwork does feel like an island and a forest together. This works pretty well, and I like the fact that it's got like a bunch of misty looking fog around it, because that's what you feel like. It feels like it would be a very humid location. I like this artwork, and again, these cards are definitely powerful enough for the modern environment, as proved by Horizon Canopy, right? I mean, Horizon Canopy has shown that clearly these lands can have a home, depending on whether, like, I feel like these ones are going to just kind of be regular, everyday use that a lot of people want to get. I don't think these are going to be particular decks only, but bear in mind that I'm not a modern expert. I don't play modern, so this is just my estimation of how things go in that regard. Now, we've gone through all the spoilers for the day, so let's roll the golden scroll. These are the people who have my back on Patreon or through channel memberships. We are welcoming a brand new member, Christian Morrison. Thank you for becoming one of my golden lords. Glad to have you on board. And to the rest of you, what are you waiting for? The water's fine. Get on in here. Get on that scroll. We have done everything we're here to do. So let me say, thanks for being here. And I'm history, baby.